Of course, well, just briefly, my name's Carey Gille, and I'm the president and co-founder of Franchise Fastlane. As you said, we're called what's an FSO, or a franchise sales organization. Every day, I get to work with the top franchise consultants and 15 of the best emerging franchise brands in the country to change lives through business ownership. Vincent, this is always a rewarding experience, but especially if you think about all that was 2020, as people were desperate and they were seeking. You've heard the quote that life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. And it was so rewarding to introduce people that were right there at that edge. That's where they were standing, right there at the edge of their comfort zone, to franchising as a solution during such a difficult time for them. I'm a serial entrepreneur, as you said. I've co-founded 4 companies. And after experiencing the extremes of both startups, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today, and then corporate America, I really have an appreciation for franchising. That's where I've landed. And that is definitely my end game.
Yeah, you're definitely a well-rounded entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is you have a lot of different perspectives to add to the show today. So I am excited to jump into the big 5 here, Carey. On
Great.
each episode with a new guest, we will go over these 5 questions to help you, the listeners, learn what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. You ready to go?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Great. So I'd love to ask you when that moment was when you realized you weren't happy with what you were doing or you needed some kind of change to truly start being on your own. Let's hear your story.
Sure. I have always wanted to be an entrepreneur from a very young age. I always wanted to drive my own vision. In fact, vision is my favorite definition in the Webster's Dictionary. It is defined as a clear and compelling picture of a preferable future. Wow, isn't that what we all want? A clear picture of a preferred future. It's really something we all dream about. But my background is an unlikely one for an entrepreneur. I was raised in a small Midwest town here in Nebraska, daughter of a pastor. I graduated in a class of 8, 4 boys and 4 girls. I went on to graduate college during the dot-com boom, and tech was the sought-after industry. Everybody wanted to be in tech. So I partnered with a couple others, and we built the very first software solution that we created together. And it was a tool that valued items that people gave to charity. It valued your charitable donations. We had no marketing budget, but we did have a compelling story. So I wrote a press release and we started sending it to local markets, Kansas City, Nebraska, Iowa, right here in the Midwest. And sure enough, the media liked it because it was all about be more generous, but then reward yourselves with a tax break. So I started serving as a spokesperson and just traveling to the little local markets. And I thought, if this works locally, what would happen if I tried national? So I sent it to the Wall Street Journal, and I thought for sure that was going to land right there in the round file, right there. What is this local company in Nebraska? Why do they think they deserve national media exposure? You know, they call us Silicon Prairie instead of Silicon Valley with a software tool. But without any advance notice, they ran the story, and they ran it on the front page and right above the fold. And the story exploded. I spent the next year in New York City as a featured guest on CNN Headline News, MSNBC, U.S. News, The World Report, and more. And here I was 23. I mean, I'd only been filing my own taxes alone for a couple of years. And all of a sudden you're a tax expert. H&R Block reached out to discuss a partnership in which they wanted their tax cut users to have access to this tool. So we started negotiating that. And then Intuit reached out. They're fiercely competitive, TurboTax and Tax Cut. And they said, no, we'll just buy you. So at a very young age, I went through my first acquisition and I was part of selling my first company. Per the agreement, I stayed at Intuit for a few years, corporate America, right? Imagine that. All I had ever done was startups. And now I'm at a Fortune 500 company. And it was definitely square peg round hole, but I did learn so much. Scott Cook, he is a corporate icon, and he is so committed to the customer, voice of the customer, VOC, net promoter, and more. And I learned so much. During this time, I also started working on another company that you mentioned in my introduction that monetizes travel data. That company is now called Sojourn. They employ hundreds. But I was anxious to get home. I wanted to get back to the Midwest. And I heard about this concept at home. My time was up at Intuit. I heard about this concept at home called complete nutrition. And it was founded by a gentleman named Ryan Zink. And his entire background was in franchising. It was in fitness, health, which I love. It was a development position. And I had a lot to learn. I didn't know franchising, but he brought me on to lead development. we set a goal of 20 locations. We wanted to sell 20 franchises in the next year. And again, it exploded. We sold over 200. I bought 3 of my own. My husband's name's Chris, so we ran those. We bought a Snap Fitness gym. I fell in love with franchising. For me, it was the best of both worlds. It was this opportunity to own your own business, like I did in the startup world, but also this opportunity to have infrastructure and resources and processes like corporate America. It was both. It was vision. It was a clear and compelling picture, and it was also a preferable future. So I fell in love. Ryan and his partner went on to sell Complete Nutrition, had a very successful exit, but I knew I wanted to stay in the industry. I had fallen hard for franchising. So if we fast forward, now I've been in franchising for, many years, probably more than I want to say on this show, both as a Z and a Zor. And I'm a big believer. But I really think it's the best way to go into business for yourself. Ryan and I ended up partnering again. We took some time off. We ended up partnering again to start Fastlane in January of 2017. And how incredible. We are now the top, in terms of units sold, the top FSO in the US. We rep 15 strong brands, and every day I make incredible Zorzy matches. I introduce potential investors to strong franchisor brands.
Yeah, very, very thorough answer. I'm excited to ask a few questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all of these different stops on the entrepreneurial path, from the top of the food chain to starting out, which was most enjoyable for you?
Oh, that's not easy. I mean, that ride of being a spokesperson for a startup company is probably something I'll never, what an adrenaline rush, right? You're young and you have this great new idea, but there's challenges in startup America as well. So I don't think I've ever sat in any role that I love as much as the one I sit in today, because it's just so impactful. Every day I just wake up and I feel very good about what I do and how I'm impacting others. So probably my role today is my favorite role.
Well, that's the best answer you could give, because that means you're as happy as you've been in your career. But since you've been on this journey as well, what would you say the 2 most difficult parts of being an entrepreneur are for you?
Yes, before franchising, I would say 2 things: lack of systems and processes. I mean, if you're on your own as an entrepreneur, it's not there.
You need a system.
Yes, you need it. And you start with a blank slate. You just do. And then number 2, wearing every hat alone, right? It's up to you to write the legalese, but also the marketing content. It's up to you to set the strategy and the 3-year plan, but also take out the garbage at the end of the day. So those are challenging, but it's also where I love franchising. When you're a potential business owner in franchising, you get to read an FDD. And you get to see the processes and the policies. Item 6, fee structure. Item 7, summary of your investment. Item 19, what are the other people in the system making?